So we have one more speaker today, and that is Gordon Frankie. Gordon is a faculty member at the University of California, Berkeley. He's a research entomologist. He's a specialist in native bees and other native insects that visit avocado flowers. And he's been working in Ventura County since 2014 and has given talks to the avocado industry several times. So I'm happy to introduce him to talk about what he's been seeing in Ventura County.
Okay, very good. Well, let me introduce my talk by saying that the other talks are really very interesting and relate in part to things that we're doing, especially with regard to bumblebees. But let me say also that I only have a few minutes. I was given 10 minutes, so it's not a lot, but what I'd like to do is talk in generalities today to let you know how much work we've been doing and also what to expect with regard to using pollinator habitat gardens. And it isn't just simply a matter of knowing something about the visitors, but also you have to know something about the plant and also have to know something about the growers. So there's a relationship between the three aspects here that I'd like to talk about, and they're all very important. So maybe if I can have the next slide. I want to show you what a habitat garden looks like. They come in various forms. They've been very successfully used with many crops throughout the United States and even into Europe. And everybody has usually reports that they're very successful in producing the pollinators that are also associated with the crop plants. And this has been the case with our work. And again, I want to say that I'm going to talk in general terms because I only have 10 minutes. But I want to show you what hedgerows or habitat gardens look like. The one on the left side is about 300 and it's a little over 100 meters in length. And it's got about 17 different flower types, all of which we know are attractive to native pollinators in the area. And then on the one on the right side is another type of hedgerow. This one is based upon the kinds of seeds that you can buy in any nursery that produce a wide variety of different flower types, natives and non-natives both. So this is just to give you an idea of what we're talking about when we say habitat gardens. Now, these gardens are not constructed just willy-nilly. These are based upon relationships that we know about between the flower and the visitors. So there's a lot of research that goes into knowing those relationships at the onset. And then if we could have the next slide, I think I can show you. This is something also that we also realize is very valuable for many growers in the Southern California areas, and that is the wildlands area adjacent to these orchards, which are very common. And these contain an awful lot of wonderful pollinators that are also visiting avocado flowers. Now, I know people look at this and they say, oh, gee, this would be the thing we'd want to get rid of. But the growers that I work with, they all have an appreciation for at least some of the weeds. And this is mustard in the springtime. And it contains a lot of food for pollinators. And we've measured the pollinators that are in these areas, and they're astounding numbers that actually occur when these blooms take place. So weeds are important. And we think also that growers, if they just go easy on the weeds, don't try to kill every weed, that they'll probably get some benefits from the weeds that are in their orchards. So the next slide. This is what happens when you have a year's worth of growth from the previous slide that I showed you that has all 17 species of plants that we know are very attractive to pollinators. And this, I'll get to how many that we're talking about at the end of my talk, but I want to show you what happens when you get to the point where you actually have lots of flowering and a lot of bee activity. And we monitor these these plots, and we compare them with control plots. For example, in this case, I think I can tell you, we monitor in this area, and to the right side are the orchards, and then up here are the control areas, and we monitor both control as well as on near the garden areas. And then we always get a greater diversity and abundance near the hedgerow areas. The other thing that's important too that we're working on, and that is some of the capacities of some of these visitors. Some of these visitors can travel quite distances. They're not limited like with the bumblebee study, which I think is very interesting. We also have a lot of bumblebees here too, but they're only one of the 30 species of bees that we actually record that are in these avocado orchards. So this is really an important aspect that I want to now stress. And that is, again, I'm talking about generalities here. And that is, it's really important for the researcher to be in constant contact with growers to let them know what is actually happening so that they can see the results. And the results can be seen by the flowering that's taking place and also by many of the visitors, which are easily observed, but someone has to actually help the grower see these visitors. And you can do this through photography. You can do this through on-site visits with them, which we do a lot of. And once again, I want to emphasize that there is this relationship that we've established between the growers we work with, the insects that visit these plants, and the plants themselves in making selections. Now, some people like to say that we should only use native plants. And I want to debunk that by saying, if you watch what the bees are doing, they'll tell you what they like, and then you should plant those plants. And in our case, about half of the plants that you see in this view here are natives to California, native California plants that we have a lot to select from. And then about half are non-natives. And the first plant that you're looking at here, this beautiful magenta flowering plant here, is from Chile. This is Calendrinia. So this is one of the really attractive plants that brings in some of the best pollinators that also visit the avocado flowers. So I want to establish that kind of understanding that we spend a lot of time with growers, and we spend a lot of time knowing exactly which plants the bees like by watching them and following them. So these are very simple things, natural history kind of things, but we also record all this data. We also record data about the activity of these insects on the avocado flowers. I won't be able to talk about the frequency counts that we make, but they're there, and we've established that they're very active on these avocado flowers. So the other thing that I want to talk about is, I think the next slide will show you some of these images. That this is one of our best pollinators for a wide variety of problems. This is the most common native bee in California. This is the sweat bee. It's not the sweet bee, believe it or not, it's the sweat bee, Agapostum texanus, in the family Halictidae. And you can see what the females are doing. They're visiting some of the flowers that we planted, and they're loaded with pollen. They have a great capacity. And we see these very commonly on the avocado flowers in the areas where we work in Southern California, around the Ventura, Santa Barbara area. So this is Agapostum texanus, one of our best. And then we focus a lot on this bee because it also has a wide variety of host plants that it visits. And we know about these host plants because we've been watching these things and collecting for years. Next slide. This is another bee that we think is extremely important in the pollination of avocados. This is the genus Serotina. It's a small carpenter bee. This is one here that is visiting one of the small native plant flowers, but this is just to show you what the body looks like. And when this bee is active, and there are several species in California that are active on avocado flowers, the bee will be full of pollen, and it travels around and goes to avocado flowers very nicely, in addition to the native plants that we planted. So here again is an example of something that probably isn't very easily seen. This is a small bee, but it's very effective. And years ago, Howell Daly from the University of California, Berkeley, and some of his colleagues predicted this bee eventually would be shown to be one of the most productive and most beneficial pollinating bees probably in California crops. And we've seen this also in other crops in California, Northern California, with stone fruits. So this is an important group of bees that really needs more attention. And this is the Serotina or Serotinia in the apid family. Next slide. Want to also show you that we're paying attention to some of the other visitors that don't get much attention in avocados, and that is hoverflies. We have a whole series of hoverflies that we're working with, and they're also attracted to the avocado flowers very commonly. We see them all the time, and we're collecting a lot of these to get them identified and also to examine the bodies of these flies to see what kinds of pollen loads they're actually carrying. And once again, the hedgerows that we plant, the pollinator habitat gardens we plant, are also very attractive to these particular this particular fly group. But there are other flies as well, and other people in other studies around the world, including Israel, and also in other countries in South America and in Mexico, have noted that these flies and other fly groups, other families of flies, are also very attractive. So next slide. This is a breakdown of what we found. I'm just, again, being very general here and willing to answer questions once we get started, but wanted to show you that half the non-apis visitors to avocado flowers in the areas where we work are bees. Almost all of these are native bees, 50% of them, 30 species of bees, and from a wide variety of different bee families, by the way. The flies, 20 species of flies. A large number of those are in the family Syrphidae, but we also have Caliphorids, and we have other families as well. We have 7 species of wasps that are also visiting. We don't know how effective they are, but we're beginning to pay more attention to wasps. And we have at least 3 species of beetles. So the conclusion that we draw is that these habitat gardens are habitats for other insects. And a lot of these insects are also visiting the flowers of avocado, and at the same time, probably doing pollination work. We had set out to be able to measure the pollen loads that they're carrying, but weren't successful with our first effort at trying to get a USDA grant to study that. But it still is an open book for us to study. And this is the results of about 8 years of work collecting and working with growers, and also working with plants that the bees and other insects like, and they form the habitat gardens. And we're very supportive of habitat gardens, and the people that we've worked with are also very pleased with once they get started with these gardens, and we help them get started in many cases, and they see the results right away. And they're able to also see a lot of these particular kinds of insects that are visiting their avocado flowers. So part of it has to do with identifying which ones are coming in, and also figuring out a way to be able to communicate with the growers of what these things look like. So we use macro photography a lot. All of our publications have huge pictures of the insects that come to these avocado flowers, so people can see these things. Bumblebees are no problem. Everybody sees a bumblebee and they can watch it, but not everybody sees a Serotina, and not everybody sees an ultra green sweat bee. So we present the growers with these images, and we also present them sometimes with boxes of bees that are pinned up, or insects that are pinned up, so they can identify these things and see what they look like. So communication with growers is one of our most important aspects of using this approach to being able to more fully utilize the native insects that are visiting these avocado flowers. And I think that's all I really want to say. And I know these things are very general. If you want to look at our website, we're continually updating it. It's the UC Berkeley Urban Bee Lab. And our website is helpabee.org. Very easy to remember. And we produce all of our results on this, most of our results anyway, on this website. So I'm happy to answer questions. And once again, I want to indicate that most of the comments I'm making are of a very general nature, but we think there's an awful lot of potential for pollinator habitat gardens. We've been able to develop enough information to indicate to us that these things are attracting a lot of native insects, and then a lot of these insects are also going to the avocado flowers. So I'd be happy to answer questions and even help people get started. So thank you very much.